there's a one-stop center for the services that Kenyans require. I wish to respond to some of the other issues in the following manner. The question of legal services, it is important, but I want to also just mention to the Kenyans that we are talking of almost 3.5 million Kenyans out there in different parts of the globe. Of course, the United States has the highest population, but in all the countries, we are talking of almost 3 million plus Kenyans who are in the diaspora. And the best we can do is that as much as we can have legal advisory services, sometimes within the embassies, depending on the resources available, we would strongly advocate that going forward, perhaps we can improve on this in terms of whether we have sufficient resources to back this particular service. But you will appreciate also that sometimes we have cases where Kenyans are in distress, and some can signal the embassy and say they are in distress. There are others who do not speak at all when they are in distress, so you sometimes stumble on information, but maybe it was not volunteered by the person in question. And this is the example of the Dida case. We were reading about it. When he left, when he went, obviously it was his personal decision. But the communication as to his whereabouts or what he was doing, he was silent on this. So it becomes very difficult to be able to keep track on some of these. But our missions have intervened in various circumstances to try and guide Kenyans in distress and help them to access legal services in different areas. But please remember, it is a very expensive undertaking, and we would be misleading the House if we said that we can take up this role directly. It can be maybe under very special circumstances that an intervention is done. On the issue of Kenyans who may have died abroad, in the last, I think in the course of this year, Kenya, the Kenyan Foreign Ministry has assisted about 18 cases of Kenyans who may have died under different circumstances. And our embassies, our missions have been of assistance in trying to repatriate the remains to the country. And again, as I say, this is when the distress and the circumstances are on a case-by-case basis that you analyze and see what the circumstances are. We have the bilateral labor agreements, which we are working on. We have negotiated some, like with Germany, with Austria. These are now concluded. There are others that are in the pipeline. For instance, the Saudi government, we are working on how to improve our engagement when it comes to the labor movement. Recently, for instance, the Qatar Minister for Labor was here, and this was a conversation on how we can advance the conversation between Kenya and Qatar. So we'll continue streamlining the bilateral labor agreements so that any issue of immigration or migrant workers is in conformity with the international law. It also conforms to matters of human rights, and through these bilateral agreements we want to try and secure the dignity of Kenyans in the various places that they prefer to work in. On the issue of Lebanon, I just want to state that, one, we have about 26,000 Kenyans in Lebanon, and obviously evacuating 26,000 is a very massive undertaking. But as a measure, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through our embassy in Kuwait, was sending out messages so that those who are in distress can register. Even before the war escalated, this was ongoing. And I think we had received almost about 1,500 or so who had registered with the embassy, indicating that they may need support for evacuation. The others were quiet. And believe you me, Kenyans, senators, we also had a situation where the Kenyans there, out of their own volition, say they don't want to move. They want to hold out until the situation cools down. So we have that dilemma as well of Kenyans who hope for the best and do not want to move. And you cannot force them because we have to handle this in a humanitarian way. But the government of Kenya has set aside 100 million, and there's a committee in the Foreign Affairs working with the security and other agencies to see how this 100 million can be utilized to assist in the evacuation of Kenyans who are in Lebanon at this point in time. I may need to seek further clarification from the Honorable Senator Olekena, because the issue of the returns, maybe I need guidance a little more on what are the specifics of these returns, because we are also under the diplomatic arrangements, so we may need to seek clarification, and then we can tackle that particular issue. You came in and you did touch on the investments that Uganda made at that time. I think they were very lucky and they were wise in a way, but I had responded to it partially by saying that right now in New York, for instance, Kenya has bought a floor in a building, and I'm happy to state that during the UNGA conference, the Senator Ledama was with us in that very space that has been bought by the Kenyans in New York. But we have other assets. We have residential assets and so forth. And when we said that we have a global strategy, a strategy being developed for our global assets, we are going to share this conversation with you so that we can all have a unified position as Kenyans on how we can unleash the value and the potential of the assets we have in different countries abroad. There are quite a number, whether on the African continent, or Europe, or now as we are talking in the US and so forth, or Asia. We need time to have a serious conversation on these assets. I wish to reiterate the issue about compensation, which the Senator for Machakos raised, and I want to reiterate that we are looking at it, but we must be conscious of the fact that we cannot dictate to the American Congress. We can submit Kenya's situation, but the procedure of the operations, their standing orders, we cannot override that as a country. But we continue engaging so that the matter can receive the necessary attention from the Congress. Thank you.
Yes, your question hasn't been responded to adequately.